This is Yassir. Thank you for coming on our first ever episode of Tech Talk London.
It's my pleasure.
You're the CEO of Seyo, so let me just hand it over to you and explain what Seyo do.
Yeah, so we're still working on the elevator pitch because it's quite a deep technical thing. But it's, I guess in a nutshell, it's you have a lot of machines that are automating, like in warehouses, but usually you only see them in places like warehouses where you have more than one machine working on a single task. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason for that, and that's because of synchronization. How do you synchronize without a central clock? In warehouses, you can have a central clock because you have a central infrastructure like Wi-Fi or 4G, 5G. Yeah. But then you go to any other environment, you don't have that. Yeah. How do you solve that problem? Well, you get rid of time. Yeah. Time is a social construct, so you get rid of that and you synchronize machines using logic. And then what that allows you to do is complex tasks with autonomous systems that can move around, and it's safe.
And it's safe.
So we allow automation anywhere.
Mm-hmm. I mean, when it comes to, like, say, equipment, and you're penetrating the mining sector first.
Heavy industries in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So like construction, oil and gas, but we're starting with mining.
Okay. And your technology could also work for like trading, right, as well, because lag times and things like that.
Yeah, it could. Yeah, people have come to us about like high frequency trading and race conditions and the speed of light problem. Those are interesting, but there are other ways of solving those as well, because safety isn't a huge part of that. As in, like, you're not going to have twisted metal plus some human flesh entangled there. So it's something like we could do something there. Blockchain also has an issue of time spoofing, because the way that you solve the distributed clock problem there is you create blocks, and the blocks are lenient with time, so you can inject fake time stamps and that. So there are lots of applications, but we want to focus specifically now with automation and machines, because that would lead on to things like autonomous cars, drones, Roombas in your house. You can throw two of them now and they would work properly instead of bumping into each other. So we just think like it's the one that's going to have the most impact for the same amount of input.
And so, like, the distributed systems today, like, do they kind of, in the mining sector, do they kind of rely on back-end systems right now, or? Yeah,
mining, they have things like mesh networks, but they use that specifically for telemetry to get data out of the mines. Yeah. And that's because although they can get things like 4G and Wi-Fi underground, it's using something called like leaky feeder network antennas. That's like, you just get a wire, you cut the insulation off, and it starts to become a radio. So although it's by standard it's 4G, it doesn't have the bandwidth. So it's good for like slow data acquisition. In terms of automation, they've got things like autonomous haulage, where they move stuff around. But that's purely like on fixed GPS points, like at this time you're going to be here, at this time you're going to be here, and they have to set up 4G or 5G next to that to be able to operate it. So it's a nice PR experiment. It's not really a solution.
Yeah, I mean, and I remember I actually came across your pitch when I was watching the EF pitch, which is very well done, by the way.
Thank you.
You talked about the mortality rates amongst mine workers, and like, so insurance companies having to shell out billions because of this. Would you be able to kind of go into detail about kind of the positive impact you'll probably have on human life, I guess?
Yeah, so there is like, and in fact the stats that I presented were very conservative in terms of the monetary cost, because I was specifically talking about machines and humans interacting with each other. But it doesn't take into account like underground people are breathing diesel fumes, you've got all the particles underground. Delayed death, which is the worst kind, because it's slow and painful. But what we would, in fact, the whole mining industry, if you look at annual reports now, they're all talking about safety, because the thing about mining is not a lot happens, then suddenly an explosion happens, and then 30 people die at a time. It's not usually one at a time. So it's always bad when it happens. It's always bad when anyone dies. So the simplest way of reducing the deaths is by getting people out of there. That will get rid of machine to human deaths. Oops, I just spat, by the way, sorry guys. Machine to human deaths, and that's 30 billion in the US and Canada in compensation. And then the general slow deaths of people inhaling fumes, if they're not underground, they won't be getting cancers and stuff like that. So just getting people out of those environments, that's enough to have a huge impact. And then you have other things like the machines themselves can be designed to be more, how do you say, like ecologically friendly, because you don't have to have giant blast walls on them because you don't have people inside it anymore. So if the machine gets crushed, but it's a cheaper machine, you just build a new machine.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of benefits to having the machines autonomous.
Yeah.
And also there is just a labor shortage in things like mining. I know mining isn't a cool thing because everyone's talking about green, but unfortunately, if you forget about fossil fuels, everything that you purchase needs some kind of metal inside it.
Yeah.
So you can't turn your back against mining. You need to have that until we find synthetic ways of making everything.
Yeah.
So people will keep dying until we save them.
Until you save them.
Yeah. Seyo.
and so are you hoping so machines can just kind of leverage computer vision and kind of dig themselves?
Well, I mean, that's the current solution. I know there's one company that's using like the Tesla and Roomba style of computer vision where you use like LiDAR to create 3D maps. The problem that we solve is now you put two of these machines down there. What's the outcome? How can you measure? Can you predict the increase in efficiency? You can't, because there is feasibly when they're just egocentric, which means they're making decisions by themselves without any coordination. You get to a situation where it's like, okay, I'll go if you go. No, but I'll go if you go. And then you get in a deadlock. Or they keep bumping into each other, then finding each other and bumping into each other, like a Roomba does.
Yeah.
It's not the right way to do it. How can you allow them to be like, I'm trying to do this thing.
Yeah.
What is it okay if I do that? And then the other robot can sit there and say, yeah, it's good, I'm going this way, so you can do that. Oh look, I bumped into the microphone now.
It's all right.
There's something over there that I'm going to excavate. Oh no, but I'm already going there, you don't need to go there. So you allow complex, you're essentially moving what we have now, the central dictator, like in a warehouse. I'm Iraqi, so we use words like dictator a lot.
Yeah.
But in warehouses, the way they solve the synchronization problem is you don't synchronize the machines, you just have somebody tell them what to do. Like, you go now, and you predict it as well because it's all one machine.
Specific model?
Yeah, and it's because usually like in a warehouse, like an Amazon one, you have one type of robot and one task. That's all they do, so it's easier to predict. Now, when you get to a complex environment, you want that level of coordination, but it's not that simple to predict.
Yeah.
So you offload it onto the machine. You give the machines the language to be able to arbitrate it between themselves.
Yeah. That's interesting.
It's fascinating, man. It's fascinating.
Well, you would hope so, because you've just spent all this time in EF creating a startup. I'm assuming you've raised money, right?
Well, we've raised like in total 130K.
Yeah.
But we're in the process of fundraising, getting our seed round.
Yeah.
It's going well, actually. Like I said, everything happens in one go. So with fundraising, it's terrible until it goes well.
Yeah.
So now it's going well, but it's because I'm about to go on holiday. I'm kind of like being chill with I'm like, what's I don't care. And they're like, no.
When you come back, you're going to be firing off.
Exactly. I'm going to get spam filtered. So.
And so, like, one of the questions I wanted to ask is, like, just to really understand the impact that Seyo want to have. So in a fairy tale world, 10 years from now, is there a framework or systemic change you'd just be really excited to see in, like, the mining sector? Hopefully executed by Seyo, of course.
Yeah, well, for us, it's more than the mining sector. So it's because our ultimate vision is like public infrastructure transportation. And the idea would be like, imagine like a smart city. You know, you've got, we imagine like levels of data hierarchy. So you have like 5G and 4G and all that. They'll be amazing for wider level, neighborhood level decisions. So saying like, the commercial road is going to go one way between 4 and 5 o'clock because it's bare busy going that way. But then once you set that rule, the machines themselves can then sort that out. And then because the future we imagine is this Seyo protocol would be like in all of the machines, it would be like a standard. So because of that, if you have like an autonomous truck driving and it hits a speed bump and a robotic arm from a factory falls out, it's still understood by the machines because it has Seyo inside it as well. So then they can communicate with it and say, oh look, there's something in the road. What is it? Oh, it's something that can't move. It doesn't have a movement function. So that means I need to get out of the way. So you have this like truly interconnected machine to machine communication. Trains can communicate with cars. If cars are like crossing, for example, they can send signals to tell the car to move. So that's what it would be. The transportation is the big vision, but transportation is public, so you have to go through regulation. So that's why we're starting with industry to make it robust. And then once there's enough Teslas on the road, you don't want them crashing. And the other issue, sorry if I'm rambling, but this is just a very interesting subject to me. But the other issue you have is like Teslas. They are effectively Roombas that move 70 miles an hour because you put two Teslas side by side, they don't know they're Teslas. They don't know that they're autonomous. They just know that there's a big metal thing next to me. So that means you will still get all the traffic problems. You'll still, like on the motorway, you'll get traffic shock waves. Because if you see an accident, you're going 70, you suddenly slow down. Everyone does the same thing. Now, if you had something like Seyo, you can just ping back messages saying like, I am dropping down to 40, everyone else do that. So you don't get the traffic shock wave, you just get like group slowing down, smoothly going through, coming back up. It'd be glorious. It'd be amazing.
Your life vision is done.
Yeah, exactly. So that's it. It's just like make machines intrinsically, like give them the ability to parse complex situations
in like
from like
supersonic speed.
Yeah, well that's the speed of two cars flying towards each other. That's how the latency needs to be very low. So that's why 4G.
I mean, I wanted to really just touch on you personally now, and kind of how, what kind of led you to being here right now, in terms of, I mean, did you come from an entrepreneurial background?
Not really. Not really. My parents are Iraqi, so.
You're gonna have to keep us up to date with the stereotypes.
Yeah. So Iraqis are very. They like stability. So it's like become an engineer or become a doctor. Anything else is a hobby.
So you're technically a failure.
Yes. Well, he's very explicit about that. No. But the thing is like the way that my dad went through his like medical career is to me a little bit inspirational. I don't want to give him too much credit. No, I'm joking. He's great. But he was in Iraq. He had to leave during the Iraq-Iran war. He wanted to be a surgeon, but if he was a surgeon, he'd have to stay on the battlefield. And he was like, nah, bun this. So he got a scholarship in the UK, came here, did hematology, and then he built this private practice, which is quite rare in hematology because it's not like, oh, my back hurts. It's like, oh, my blood's feeling funny. So so no one really notices that. So it's more like chronic things. So it's very interesting that he built this good private practice. I wanted to be a doctor when I was 10 or 12 because everyone wants to be their dad when they're 10 or 12, you know. And then I got older and I didn't want to be my dad. I wanted to be an engineer. So I did electronics. So he's still proud of me. He was like my son. I'm living through. He wanted to be an engineer way back when he was a kid as well. So I did electronics. Was supposed to do my master's in the UK. I got bored of Southampton. It's not an interesting place. So I dropped it, went to Hong Kong to do my MSc. That was fun. And then I got a job in a Japanese company in Tokyo, at a marketing company.
But you did 160 hours, right?
Yeah, something like that. Total. No, but I get to the interview and it's like for a marketing job, and I'm like, do you have like engineering jobs? And the CEO is like, yeah, we can get you one. So I did software, even though I'd never done it before. And then within a year, I was like head of entrepreneurship, like building products in the company, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. So I was like reading books every morning, going to my team, being like, yeah, we should do OKRs. That's the one. Had no idea how to actually implement them. So, and that's when I got the taste for like, this business thing, that's how it works. But it wasn't, Japan isn't the right environment for it, especially like in a big company. So I was like, EF, they gave me an offer and I was like, I'll try it in London. Because if I can do it in London, it's like a global stage. If you can succeed in that side of the world, then you can succeed anywhere. But Japan is a very localized market. So
I mean, did you have any like entrepreneurial experiences when you were younger? Like, did you steal flowers off somebody's property and then sell it back to them?
So no, my dad in the house, he put 2 NTL phone lines because you remember back in dial-up, if you were connected, you couldn't make phone calls. So I used to connect to the second line, and I would use, I don't want to get arrested for this, but I used to use Napster to download songs, burn them on CDs, and sell them to people at school. For 50p. I thought that was a lot of money back then. I should have done like £3 to be honest. But the issue with it was that dial-up was not actually that fast to be downloading like a whole album worth of music. So I ended up like with this backlog, and I was like not sleeping early because I had to like stay up and download everyone's songs and then burn them on a disc. And I only had like 1 disc at a time I could burn. So there was like 3 people whose orders I never fulfilled. Still feel guilty about it. So that was like my first business. I'd rather not, in case it comes up in some like Google search, they can pass the audio. But yeah, that was dark times. That was my first embezzlement, I guess.
That's interesting. And so I want to kind of transition into the EF process. Was this your first company, or did you try another one before?
I tried another one before when I was in Asia. That one was like to do with music in Korea. There's a big problem in South Korea with independent music.
what is it, all state?
Well, because you have these things called chaebols, which are like giant companies like Samsung and Hyundai, and they pretty much like own everything.
Yeah.
And so if you want to do well in music, you can't really, like in America or London, you just like use Bandcamp or something, SoundCloud. It doesn't work that way there. So we were trying to create like a streaming platform for indie musicians to be able to get the monies. It was going well, but when I co-founded, we didn't actually establish it, but I didn't have a network of people around me that were capable of like supporting me. So I just ended up doing it with my friend who was Korean. But then I ended up having to do the technical side and telling him how to do the business side. So it was like, and I was like, but just do that in Korean, right? But if he could have just taken control of that and I could just focus on the product. So that was one of the inspirations for like going to EF, because like you as an individual, you're not that unique. You're like maybe 1 in a million, right? So there's like 100, I can't do maths. Whatever 7 point something billion divided by a million is, that's how many of you there are. But for you and that other person who's like the perfect match to sort out a problem, that is the thing that's rare. So that's why I wanted to go to EF. It was about having a network around me where if I had a problem to solve, I could just dip into that network and be like, that's what I need.
I mean, that's interesting because EF have a completely different model. I mean, for some reason, I kind of compare Y Combinator and EF, but they're completely different because Y Combinator seldom look for, just people without a company. I mean, unless they know them personally, maybe Cruise Automation with Sam Altman, things like that. But I mean, EF bring just wicked smart people together in a room and get them to network. I was just really curious to know, like, is there a skill in, say, finding a co-founder and like pitching yourself? Because when you pitch yourself, you become very good at bullshitting yourself, and so you try to pitch what you hope the other person wants to hear, and so there's a tipping point where you want to present your best self, but then there's also a point where you don't want to obviously mislead or kind of go down a path with the wrong partner, I guess. Yeah.
Okay. That's something I've thought about a lot because I actually did EF twice.
Okay.
I came back for EF 10 and then I did EF 11 and that's when I got through. Yeah. And the big problem I did in EF was I didn't know how to pitch myself.
Okay.
So the issue I had is that I'm both technical and business. So I have like electronics engineering, integrated circuit design, software, and I did business. So I was like, let me open up the playing field. I'll pitch myself right in the middle. Now the problem with pitching yourself right in the middle is you appeal to no one. But at the same time, I can't sit there and say like I'm an exited entrepreneur. So I'm not like super business and I'm not super technical. But when I sat down and thought about it, so then I didn't get through the first EF. I was like working on an idea I didn't care about. It was a nightmare. Yeah. But I was very aware of the failure that I made during EF the first time. And then the second time, I just had to sit there and be like, well, I can't do the technical side. I'm able to execute things, but I just don't have
You're not the best.
I'm not the best. Yeah. And I usually like if there's a core thing, like when you have an idea, there's like the biggest challenge is there and everything else is like making it into the rest of the product.
Yeah.
That bit, if I've solved that, the rest of it, I just can't finish it.
Yeah.
It's, okay, I've got to tweak the button now, put some CSS, whatever it is. So I'm not the right guy for this. So I was like, okay, I have to do business. And it has to be something I'm interested in, so I have to be very clear about what I won't do, so that people, when they look at my profile, they're not going to be like, I'll talk to this guy. And the other thing as well is I just had to make sure I didn't oversell myself, because I saw a lot of pair-ups, I'm not going to name any names, but like people came from backgrounds where you would on paper think they would be good CEOs, but in reality, they would be good first hire CEOs, like a hired CEO. Yeah. The thing about the EF process is, first of all, you're not making friends. You're trying to find a partner to work with. So it doesn't matter if you like having beers with them. It's not important. That's not a co-founding relationship. The second thing is, because of the speed that EF moves at, you can't be saying to each other like, look, I'll take over now, but then once we're doing Series A, you can kick. No, it's like from day one, you have to be multiplying your productivity together. Yeah. So if they're dragging along, you get rid of them. So that's the thing, is like you need to be brutal as well. Just like if it's not working, just cut it out.
Yeah.
So
that's interesting. And so, how did you? What ended up being your thought process and your line of questioning when picking a co-founder? When you found out the mistake that you made the first time?
So, I mean, actually, it would always start with the idea first. It wasn't about... There's another mistake, which is like some people are purely business and some people are purely technical. But when you sit in that overlap, the worst thing is to sit there and say, okay, so you're the CEO and I'm the CTO? And it's like, I don't know, what's the idea? What we saw, if we're doing like a hardware thing, I guess I'd have to be a CTO. If we're doing something where it's like hacking mainframes, it's probably going to be you, because he was trying to hack a Wi-Fi in the office. It's a true story. So there's the first thing is don't think about that first. I just sit there and like talk to them. The way we got to this idea wasn't even asking them what your idea was. I just sat down with my co-founder, Yanwen. We were actually walking in a park and I was like, so just what's your background? And she just named her thesis to me and I was like, whoa. Because I didn't realize that my background actually overlapped with hers because I built distributed networks on chips. So then I was like, okay, but let's just see how this works then. So I like this. This is very powerful. And she's like, I think so too, but no one else gets it. And I'm like, I don't get the maths, but I get the idea. Let's see how it goes for like the next 2 days. Now it's like 10 months later. So it's just to see if over the next 2 days, when we say we're going to get something done, how does that manifest? What's going to happen? Is it me like stepping on eggshells, making sure I don't offend her or she doesn't offend me, whatever it is? Immediately though, we were clicking, we were communicating with very like tough conversations. A lot of people call us the babes of EF because we just like always taking care of each other, cutting fruit, talk. We have like tough conversations all the time, but it's like we just resolve it. So that was when I saw that with her, I was like, there's no point me like, and the other beauty of it is I feel like if say somebody objectively came down, like came from the future and said, Seyo will fail. Okay. Put it aside. Yanwen, let's solve something else. We have the skills between us, the overlaps that we can solve many different problems. We just really care about Seyo.
I mean, hypothetically speaking, like if there were, say, 3 important questions or issues you would have to deal with when finding a co-founder, or kind of give an example of like 3 specific topics that brutal topics that you guys went through when
so it's like core values, right? This is actually something I noticed with like relationships. When you're younger, you're a bit more like everyone is beautiful and like I just accept anyone, but then you eventually get to a point when you're like, I do have some core values which if they don't align, it's going to be very difficult to. So like for me, it's like family. You don't have to love your family, but you have to understand the importance of it and that kind of stuff. So, whatever. I don't want to go too much into my like relationship stuff, but it's a similar thing that happened with the second EF. Is I realized there are some core values. So for me is this is a very obvious one, but it's like trust, transparency. I worked with someone previous to that where it always felt like they were giving me the answer I wanted to hear, but then secretly trying to move everything to go into their direction.
Not the naked, unglamorous truth.
Yeah, exactly. So they'd be like, yeah, definitely, we should definitely do that. And then I'd go and speak to him like a few days later, and it's like, why are you still doing that thing? And it's like, because I think it's in the best interest. And I was like, but then tell me, because I'm going out pitching this thing and you're doing that thing. So it's like once you lose that trust, it's very hard to then be able to confidently go out there and be like, we're going to do this. It's like, well, I don't know, maybe they might do it, I might do that, I don't know what's going on. So trust is super important. And I guess the other thing is like, what is your intent? Everyone is fundamentally doing everything to get money in the end. But if your core value is that you just want to get rich quick, it just means that you're not going to have the patience for when things go sour. So you need to have that resilience. So like with my co-founder now, she has a kid. So she's putting herself in such a compromised situation that I know that she's not doing it for an easy way out. Her and her husband had very good salaries before. He's just started EF now as well. So they've gone from like, very nice salary down to like, PhD level salaries, but they're doing it because they have a greater ambition inside, and that's the 2 fundamental things. Everything else you can work on.
I mean, I saw, like I said at the beginning of the interview, I mean, your pitch was very good. I'm going to assume coming from an engineering background, like it wasn't that tidy and tight. What advice would you give to, say, an up-and-coming founder when it comes to pitching their business? I mean, is there a specific time frame they need to constrain their pitch into?
I mean, what
have you learned along the journey?
I used to be very introverted, but there was a teacher in high school who forced me to do drama and like public speaking and all that. So I did have a background in doing that, but pitching, I still get, by the way, I was terrified on stage. I black out when I'm on stage. I don't remember what I say. So when people say to me, like, I loved when you laughed at your own joke, I was like, did I? But the thing that we took a big gamble on that, actually. So we took a gamble because we didn't want to go too technical. We thought, let's just make it sound interesting so that they come and talk to us later. That's all we wanted. But pitching is it's a very difficult one, and everyone asks me advice on it because of that video. The advice I guess I would have to give is like, you need to understand what the thing is you're pitching is, because if you can't deliver the idea, there's like, it could be one of two things.
Yeah.
There is an idea, you're just bad at communicating it, or there is no idea, therefore you can never communicate anything of value. And that one is when you're in a situation where you should pivot, you should move your idea. If you're at the second one, that's bad. If it's the first one, then you can just break it down and be like, what is the core message we're trying to... I would argue that we did fail. We focused too much on time. Clocks are very Clocks are very important to what it is, but that's such a physical problem, like a physics problem. We thought people were going to be like, whoa.
Yeah.
But it just made people think like we're a clock.
Oh, okay.
Which is fine. Yeah, I don't really care.
A machine alternative.
Yeah. So I was like, I thought it was interesting, but in the end, it got people talking to us. So.
I mean, did you learn more about your company and your value proposition from pitching, or and was there like a preconceived assumption that it kind of blew up? I guess you get what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. So I mean. So one thing that the EF process makes you do every week is in front of your cohort, you have to do like a 90-second pitch of like what you do, what's the problem, what you're solving, what have you done since last week, and what you're going to do next week.
Oh, wow.
And that gets you very good at. I don't think they were doing it in the Paris and Berlin cohort, because when we all met together, they were doing like 10-minute Steve Jobs pitches, and we were all just like hungover doing 90-second like. I was going to say ejaculations, but you should cut that out maybe. So, but that was one way of being very good at thinking like 90 seconds is nothing. And the demo day pitch is 3 minutes. So it's only double that. So you have a very small amount of time to think like, this is my cohort. This is useful because if they hear this and they can think of a way of helping me, it's useful because some people do that. So I was like, you have to really think about what is the 6 to 8 points I need to deliver. So that's one thing. Now the actual proposition itself, less about pitching, more about after you pitch and then you have to justify your pitch. That's when you really learn. So the EF process is also very quick. So it's very hard to like optimize every aspect of your business. You have to like pick two and just lock them in. So for us, it was team and vision. Like what's the future vision? What's the team? We couldn't focus too much on the product, but Yanwen was still building it.
Yeah.
But then when it came to like our first few investor meetings, they were like, so, okay, cool. This sounds great. What's the product you're delivering?
Yan, where are you?
It's just a firmware maybe, I don't know, a DLL, who knows? And then that was when I was like, oh, I got to step back a bit, I got to stop doing this fundraising for a second. But it was the fundraise, as opposed to demo day is more about entertainment, but the pitching to investors is a very high risk but very powerful way of like understanding what you know and don't know about your own company.
Oh wow. Okay.
Although you have to be wary because European investors are very safe. They're much more like from consulting backgrounds and that kind of stuff. So they ask you like Series D questions, but you can still parse out over many conversations the core patterns. And for us, it really was about like your initial market. What is this initial market? How are you going to get to mining? And going through the manufacturers is too risky. And I was like, they're right. So that's how we ended up fixing our go-to-market and securing a pilot. So
that's amazing. And the final thing on the businessy stuff. I mean, I was just really curious to know how you think of product and how it changed while you were building the product. Because I'm assuming it's not just Yan building the product. You probably have some say in it as well.
Yeah, of course. And we're going to like once we have a clear, because she's building the core part of the product. So for us, there's a beautiful thing which is. The core, Seyo core, doesn't matter what the application is, it's the same. It's C++ code, it's an engine that like runs a life cycle. The bit that's going to be the most variable is the SDK, the front end side of it. So because of that, it means we can just go full steam ahead on the core. Doesn't matter what the initial application will be. Then once we start going into industries, this is the way we want to do it, is when we go into industries, each one is going to have a different requirement of what they want from the SDK. If we're doing it for drones, they probably want just the software SDK because they're quite technical. If you go into mining and heavy industries and construction, they probably want it to be like SCADA, where they like already connecting plants in their factories.
Yeah.
But they want some similar representation of events and autonomous machines. So that's where that comes in, and that's why the way we want to structure the organization when we finally close the fundraising is that we do have like the core teams. You have like engineering, research, product, marketing, all that kind of stuff. But then in the middle, so you have technical and business side. In the middle, you'll have like sector leads. So you'd have heavy industry lead would take someone from each, and then transportation, and then like high technology like drones and general robotics. That's the way that we want to structure it, because I think the product that faces the customer is going to be very customer centric.
Okay, so
so for now we can just focus on the core, and we are essentially consulting with the customer to build the SDK out.
Oh, that's interesting. So your product will have like add-ons, and kind of you'll be able to adjust your product based on the specific customer.
The core wouldn't have to change, but the idea is that the APIs we give them access to, they can use an SDK to implement any use case they want. But initially, because it's so early stage, we would be doing the SDKing for them, and that allows us to build out the SDK on the job, as opposed to assuming what needs to be in it. But then once it's much more established, like series like A, series B, the idea is that with good documentation, they can just take the SDK and implement anything they want. So that's the stage that it's at. I'm a believer of the best way to solve a problem is to like actually face the problem and then do it, instead of trying to assume what they would want.
That's interesting. So how do you think about, say, segmenting customer feedback? I mean, it's not like a B2C model where there's probably millions of complaints. This is a heavy industry thing. I mean, how do you think about taking on feedback and what to kind of ignore and what kind of not to?
Yeah, that's a very good thing, and that's something we're thinking about now. Is like what is the framework we're going to use to be able to essentially work with these very custom industries, but at the same time keep the product abstract. That's something.
Is that something you're still thinking about?
We're still thinking about, but I think there is already an element of like there's something we have to implement that's specific to this one use case, but it's such a small part of it that we're like, it's fine. We just do it for them. We just want to validate this out in the industry. So I think it's something over time we'll get better at it. But I mean, if they say to you like, this specific Russian-made train, we need this feature for it. It's very obvious that that's a very specific thing. But so. That's something I think over time we'd have to learn, like through engaging with more customers as well. If you start to hear this, same thing with the investors, right? The investors, if you just listen to one, you change your pitch, it becomes their pitch. But if you listen to loads of investors and then pick out the overlaps and then also believe in their overlap, you can't just take any advice that is overlapping because they still don't know the business more than you do. That's the fundamental thing to remember. You are the CEO and CTO, the co-founders of your company. But if it makes sense to you, that's when you take it. So it's the same thing with the product thing. If they're like, I want to be able to send in letters to a server to issue commands, I'd be like, no, that's not happening. I'm not setting up a PO box so that you can send in instructions. So it's a mix of like experience and just knowing what it is you're trying to achieve, I guess.
That's kind of it about like, your entrepreneurial journey and Seyo. I've got like 5 quick fire rounds.
Let's go for
it. What's the most valuable purchase you've made under £100? I mean, you've lived in Tokyo, so make the currency.
I would say it was Google Home.
Google Home?
Really? Yeah, I love it because I just dump everything from my memory because I don't trust it. So I'm at home and I'll just be like, hey Google, can you remind me to do this tomorrow at this time? Can you set a reminder? Can you set an event? Can you do this? Can you tell me you love me? That kind of stuff. So it's really good. It's a very good assistant. Better than Alexa. My friend has Alexa and it makes me shout all the time.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, because I sat down one day with my laptop trying to listen to some nice Chet Baker jazz, and I ended up screaming at it because it kept playing something else, and I just lost interest. I was like, I don't want to listen to jazz anymore.
I want a divorce.
Yeah, exactly.
A book you would give to a fellow startup founder?
That's a good one because I'm not a big fan of startup books. I have a big problem.
What the E-Myth and...
just all of these kind of like, I can't say blitzscaling, but that kind of culture of like, what does Elon Musk eat for breakfast? If you eat that, you'll be successful. But I guess a really good one is, especially for B2C, is the mum test. For B2C, that one is good because it just teaches you how to ask questions without letting people know you're trying to get a positive answer out of them. So you get honest answers. That's a good one. And another one that I really liked, but it's not very applicable, is Beyond the Cloud. Okay. Beyond the Cloud is the guy who did Oracle. No, was it Oracle? No, Salesforce. Salesforce. Benioff. Something like that. Yeah. Benioff, yeah. So he was working at Oracle, and then he went to do Salesforce. And the reason why it's interesting is it's telling you the journey through anecdotes of his time at Salesforce and from beginning to the end. The reason it's not super applicable is the guy was like a VP at Oracle when he left, so he had like 3 mil in cash saved up. So it's like a little investment. I came out with 10K from Tokyo, so it's not super applicable, but just to show you that you can solve things just like through a bit of lateral thinking. I liked it a lot. Yeah.
What's the most valuable advice you've received? It doesn't have to be through entrepreneurship in general for yourself that kind of sticks with you today.
Advice I've received. Yeah. I don't really ask for a lot of advice, but something. Okay, yeah, it's my dad. My dad, who's very good at this kind of thing, which is like. It's not, again, don't do this all the time because you'll end up hating yourself. But when something bad happens, usually you can try to segment it into like two causes. Yeah. So, Dad, I failed. I didn't get a good grade in the exam. He's like, but you studied hard, right? And I'm like, yes, I studied very hard. Okay, that's fine. It just means you're not very good at that subject. You're not smart at physics. And I'm like, no, that's not it at all. He's like, but you studied very hard. Maybe I didn't study as hard as I could have. Yeah. So it allows you to quickly figure out like, oh, actually, I was kidding myself when I said I studied hard. I didn't achieve my potential. So like, again, not everything is black and white, but some things can be close to that. And you can try to do that to force you to reflect on why the outcome came to be the way.
That's really interesting because that lesson kind of ran through EF as well. Like you've kind of learned like, not to bullshit yourself, I guess. Yeah. And it's also like failure, you shouldn't. I talked about this, I was at Facebook like a few days ago talking about failure. And the thing I was saying to them is like with failure, there are 2 categories. One of them is, it's supposed to be quickfire, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's all right. Yeah, one of them is like, Rocky's always like, pick yourself and you got to move forwards. But they never tell you like how to actually do that. But there's some kind of failure, you just don't need to bother. Like you failed, just sweep it under the rug and move forward. It's not important. And then there are the ones where it's worth beating yourself up a little bit. Yeah. And those are the ones where you should then sit there and be like, did I actually do my best? Or was it because I was being lazy? Or was it because I didn't do anything? So those are the ones where it's worth actually looking for. You take accountability for it. Sometimes it's worth sitting under your table and crying because you fucked
up. Yeah. And then while you're doing that, be like, why did I fuck up? Yeah. There is another thing about, sorry guys, this is the longest quickfire. There's another thing about failure, which is if you can become comfortable with it, it's really powerful because you can do like a controlled demolition. If like I had to take a Japanese test and I didn't know how much I need to study and like what is even the level, what does that look like, that level? Yeah. So instead of like just catching up from grade 1 to grade 3, I just went into grade 3. Took the exam. I studied for the grade specifically, but I walked in there and I just like detonated. And then you can suddenly see the edge of the room, you know where the walls are, and you're like, okay, that's how far away I am from it. Okay. So you can actually like control the demolition. If the outcome isn't very devastating, you can use failure as a way of clearing out the fog of war.
That's interesting. Yeah. So actually talking about failure, what's been your most valuable failure?
My most valuable failure? Yeah. Okay, I know this one, and that one is I wanted to be a doctor originally. Yeah. And once you say that to your dad, who's a doctor, you kind of locked into doing like 3 sciences and maths at A levels. And then I get the interview and I get the place, and then I get to the results and I'm like 1 grade away from getting it. And my response to it was, okay. And if I hadn't failed that, I'd be a doctor now. So that failure was extremely valuable to me because not hating on doctors or nothing. My dad's one, I love him, but it's just my life would have been very different.
Yeah.
An extremely different life. I have no idea.
Especially if you were here without NHS system.
Yeah, exactly. That's why he always says, don't do it. My sister went on to be a doctor, so someone else has carried on the torch.
Oh, okay.
So I don't
Fair
feel
enough.
guilty anymore.
Fair enough.
But that one is the most important failure for me.
And yeah, okay. And like, what gives you, final question, what gives you the most relief as a founder?
I'm not allowed to say that one. Okay, what gives me the most relief as a founder? It's actually, it's like having stability in my life. Like, I know this sounds weird, everyone thinks startups should be like, you jump off a cliff and you build the plane. That's the analogy they always use. But you want to at least have the framework built in, so you just like putting the cloth on it. You don't have to start like screwing on metal plates. Yeah. So things like having my family behind me on this, which is very rare. I wanted to be an actor originally, and they're like, only if Tom Cruise is in the film with you. And I'm like, I don't need your support for that. But having like a support network around me where, first of all, they know not to ask me too much about it, because I don't want to talk about Seyo when I'm at home with my family eating chicken. So and at the same time, like when things are tough, they're good people to like decompress with, and that's really important. You should build a group of people around you who aren't doing the same thing as you. That's very useful. I think I hate surrounding myself with
entrepreneurs.
Although I love my peeps at EF and my peeps at wherever I am, but just sometimes
only once a week.
Sometimes I don't want to talk about fundraising.
Well, I guess that concludes the interview. We really appreciate you coming on our first podcast.
It's fun. I love it.
And I guess we'll call it an end right now.
My guys.
Thank you so much. Really
I ramble a lot. Sorry about that.
No, that makes better content.
Yeah.